minute. Who are you?
Linux, an operating system that most people outside of computer science, and especially outside of STEM, has never heard of. Yet it literally runs the entire computing world, being used for embedded devices, servers, and is actually used to make some pretty popular operating systems like Android. It just isn't really popular in the desktop market. However, I decided to use Linux, more specifically Arch Linux, with the Hyprland environment as my primary operating system and desktop environment. And yes, I know it's GNU plus Linux. Hello everyone, I am the 10x Wizard, and in this video I'm going to be discussing my personal anecdote regarding Linux, its benefits and deficits, whether the regular non-technical user should use it, and whether a programmer should use it. So let's jump right into it. Now, the benefits and the downsides. Really, overall, the benefits of Linux is that it's extremely performant, it's super lightweight, and everything runs a lot faster. I mean, people make videos about literally reviving old grandma computer systems and preventing it from turning into e-waste by just installing Linux on there, and then boom, it runs extremely fast. Or sometimes it just runs enough to be a good operating system. It runs to be a good computer. And if you have like a computer like mine that is 10 years old, it literally opens up Windows super quick. Like if I do browse, look at this. Then again, don't use Google Chrome if you want this type of experience. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't work. Chrome is a little heavier when it comes to opening its tabs. But anyways, it works great with my hardware. I feel like it works better than Windows 10. But then again, I mean, I have a preference due to the fact that I can optimize my workflow here, which is the biggest benefit. But I'll get into that later. It really just feels like a symbiote where it becomes one with the hardware. It just allocates resources so well. It makes my hardware very, it makes my hardware happy, I guess. Everything on Linux is also extremely smooth, and usually is painless unless it's Arch, because Arch, a lot of things on Arch was not painless. Installing the drivers was not painless. Installing Steam was not painless. So I mean, that's one point for Windows, I guess, but that's if you're using Arch. Most of the time, like especially on the user-friendly distros, you're not going to have such a problem. Furthermore, Linux also has the benefit of being completely customizable, especially Arch, where you download everything that you want. Like 90% of the things you download is what you want specifically. And this allowed me to, again, make the workflow that matches my every need. And really, it gives me something that no other operating system has ever given me, and it gives me complete control over my operating system, which, due to other operating systems' proprietary natures, they really can't do what Linux does, in which I can customize what I want. I can make things go much faster, I can make things go slower, but have a lot more power and oomph to it, which, in my book, gives Linux an absolute W. But a lot of people are not going to be absolute power users like me, and so I'm going to get into that in a second. But really, one of the biggest downsides is that a lot of apps are built for the Microsoft ecosystem with Windows, especially games in Adobe, which games have largely been solved due to Steam directly working with the creators of Wine in order to make Proton, which allows games that are built for the Windows ecosystem to run really well on Linux as well. Thank you, Base Gaben. Also, the only problem is that apps like Adobe are not here, and a lot of people use Adobe for their workflows, but there is open source alternatives for Adobe. And to be honest, the way how, like, with what's happening with Adobe, it's not been, the company has not gotten a good rep, guys. So So, should you use Linux as a regular user? My answer is yes. Unless you need to work in something like Adobe or another app that is specifically not on Linux and there is no free alternatives or you can't use them, then you should go ahead and use Linux. But if you have that type of limitation, then no, I would not recommend Linux for you. But overall, for a regular user, you'll find Linux to be a far better experience than Windows 11 as of currently, as it optimizes your system to run smoothly and work the best it can. There's a lot of community solutions to a lot of problems that everyday people have, especially when it comes to antiviruses and all of this stuff. There's free solutions, and Linux is also extremely secure when it comes to those types of things. Along with the fact that a lot of people look at the Linux kernel, look at updates and everything to keep on hammering and sharpening the sword and the shield of Linux. It's a great operating system. Furthermore, since it is decentralized, it also provides a much more private user experience, as it's not tied to a corporation that requires you to sign on with an account or is connected via the cloud. So overall, yes, a regular user should use Linux, and I encourage it. And I understand if you don't want to switch the entire operating system. I mean, I didn't change my operating system until recently, just like a month ago. But I would recommend first dual booting Linux. And if you don't want to dual boot Linux, you can go ahead and run it in a virtual machine. But keep in mind that the virtual machine is pretty bad when it comes to displaying the full capabilities of something. It's going to run like crap because it's basically a machine inside your machine. So, but overall, test it out on virtual machines and then dual boot it. And then after dual booting it, you could just delete Windows entirely if you don't need it for anything else. I dual boot Windows because I need it for Oculus VR. I just recently found out that there is an alternative, but for right now, I don't want to deal with that. I have a lot more things to do. So, what distro should you run if you're going to try out Linux? And I would specifically tell all non-technical users and just regular users to first start off with Mint. Mint Linux is the best, especially the Cinnamon one, because the Cinnamon desktop environment makes everything feel like Windows, and it makes it look like Windows, and it looks really sleek and nice and modern. And so I'd recommend you dual boot and run Linux Mint for your first operating system. And to be honest, you could just stay with that if you're a non-technical user. It does everything, feels great. It's sleek, modern, it's pretty beautiful. And yeah, honestly, I'd say yes. Linux is great. Now, should you use Linux as a programmer? Hell yes. Literally, there is no reason not to use it as a programmer. There is nothing. I mean, there might be the Microsoft tools that you might want to use. Like, perhaps you want Visual Studio, and maybe that works better on there. I'm not sure. I don't really work with C# or Visual Studio, but man. Oh, the only other reason is if you have Mac OS and you're using Xcode, that's understandable. And to be honest, Mac OS is not bad by itself. But if you don't have any of those problems, you should use Linux as a programmer. Linux is built for the programmer's programmer, dude. Like, you can make blazingly fast work environments, all keyboard based, along with code running much faster than it would on Windows. You can literally install anything in a one line via your package manager, which makes things so much easier for a programmer. You just open up terminal, and then for me it would be sudo pacman-s whatever, or yay-s whatever. Furthermore, if you're looking into open source, a lot of repositories are bound to work natively on a Linux kernel, more so than any other operating system, since most applications are developed with Linux in mind due to computers running it. In this case, I'm referring to servers. So a lot of open source repositories that are going to have a server component will natively work on Linux, and so it'll make your life a lot easier Though this doesn't give it a edge on Windows, as Windows did have the WSL environment. Just run Linux natively if you want that, unless you need Windows or something, which is understandable. But I highly, highly recommend a programmer to switch to Linux. For programmers, I recommend Arch or Ubuntu. You can go ahead and mess with Fedora too. I heard Red Hat Linux is doing great overall. Still recommend Ubuntu, but Fedora is also a really good beginner one. Linus uses it, so that's enough to tell you how strong Fedora is. I especially encourage programmers to use Arch for at least like a month to test it out, because you're going to experience building up your own operating system for yourself. Like everything you have on your operating system is personalized to you because you built it. And that like gets you so much better with using the tools on Linux along with Linux itself in the command terminal. You're gonna understand things like systemctl, and you're gonna understand the system bus. You're gonna understand daemons a lot more. And overall, it's an extremely valuable learning experience just to like download Arch and just use it and play around with it. I mean, I'm like permanently stuck on Arch now because, dude, my whole workflow here is so good and it just feels so right to me. It like feels like a glove that is specifically made for my hand, and it's just awesome. So overall, from my experience with my closing remarks, I would say, yeah, Linux is great. I'd recommend you guys download it. The only time I wouldn't recommend it too much is like Silicon Max, because I heard Asahi Linux might have some problems with battery life and all of that, but I'm gonna test that out at one point because I just love Linux and I love using my Silicon Mac, so I'm probably gonna test it out. Well, I most definitely am, because, dude, if I can make the same workflow I have on Arch Linux work for Mac and use Arch Linux there using Asahi, that'd be great. But I heard Fedora is the flagship model as of currently, so who knows? I'll test it out. Anyway, closing remarks, use Linux. This has been the 10x Wizard, and I'm out.